தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.
Welcome to CrossRoads on TVI, a show that showcases the Tamil Canadian community, their issues and their successes. I'm your host, Manjula Selvarajah. Last week, many of us were celebrating Mother's Day. It certainly has been an interesting year for mothers in the workforce. As an example, over the last year, Yahoo's new CEO, Marissa Mayer, was pregnant and delivered in her first year, leading that Fortune 500 company. Given that many Tamil Canadian women, South Asian women, are rising up the ranks today, we thought it'd be great on the show to talk about if it's possible to have a phenomenal career and a phenomenal family life. Let's meet our guests. Reva Seth is an author, entrepreneur, and mother of three, a sought-after speaker, and a writer with a second book that's coming out very soon. It's called The MomShift, specifically the MomShift, Finding the Opportunity in Maternity, and it'll be published by Random House and available January 2014. Anu Yogeswaran is a Systems Analyst at Aon. I hope I've pronounced that right. A global provider of insurance products and services. She's a proud mother of triplets, 3 4-year-olds who still finds time to learn dance, keep fit in fitness training, and pick up interesting cooking skills. This we want to hear more about. Vasuki Thillainadarajah is an executive assistant to the COO of McDonald's Restaurants of Canada, a mother to a fun 4-year-old who I had a pleasure of meeting right before, and is actively involved in her community. Until recently, she was balancing life and work as a single mom and is newly engaged. Congratulations. Well, they're all with us in the studio today. Thank you for joining us, ladies. Now, I know the first topic I've told you we're going to speak about is Miss Mayer, the CEO of Yahoo. But what I wanted to do is actually show a little excerpt, just for our viewers, of an interview that she did with Bloomberg. Here it is.
I think that it was just a tremendous opportunity. I don't know that the job could have been more tailor-made. When you look at what I worked on at Google and how it compares to Yahoo, it's search, it's mail, it's the homepage, it's news, it's finance, it's maps, it's mobile. It's all the things I worked on in a new context. And I thought that would be really fun in terms of the overall challenge. And Yahoo has an amazing brand. I'm Midwestern, and so I really do feel that sort of love especially throughout the U.S. for Yahoo, and the brand is really strong there. And I think getting the opportunity to work with a great team and getting a chance to really have this brand experience a resurgence, and I just thought it was a really great opportunity and a big challenge.
So Vasuki, I'll start with you. I mean, you heard a little bit of that. Again, the interesting thing was that the day that Yahoo announced that she was the new CEO, the very same day she announced that she was pregnant and went on to basically, in her first year leading that company, to have a child. Do you think her appointment to that role and her being a new mother changed the sort of workplace?
It could have added some interesting challenges, but I don't think it in any way conflicts with what she chose to do. Deciding to have a child while pursuing a career is a woman's choice, and it's up to her to balance it. I don't think any of us should have any say in how she balances that. She made the right decision for herself, not for anybody else. I definitely wouldn't choose to do it possibly the same way.
Why? Why is that?
I am a very devoted mom. Okay. I would like to spend time with my child. That's my personal opinion. That's my personal choice for myself. I wouldn't go out there and advocate to another woman, that's how you should do it. And Marissa Mayer is courageous in wanting to do that. That's fine. And I know that it became this iconic topic for mothers everywhere. I don't see that becoming a topic if it was a gentleman, a single father. We rarely hear about it. So Is it because she's a woman we're talking about it right now?
That's
Possibly.
That's an interesting question, actually. That might be a starting point for us for the next inquiry that I'll have. But Anu, I'd love, do you think that her appointment as a sort of as a mother, do you think that's changed the environment out there for working mothers?
I personally don't think so. I mean, you take her up as a role model. You can look up to her. For her, she was passionate. She always believed that, you know, you should want to come back to something. You should want to do something. And she was passionate about her role. She took on this challenge knowing that she was pregnant, and she was, you know, she mentioned that when she took on this role. You shouldn't look at it as, oh, she came back from a maternity leave after 2 weeks to continue on, so I need to do that. It's more like, you have to remember Yahoo at that point was hitting rock bottom, or at least, you know, she was trying to bring up a company. Say if she did take that 2 months maternity leave or 3 months maternity leave, they could, and Yahoo actually fails, they could blame her for that too. You know what I mean? Like, in a sense, there's no way of saying what could have worked as far as people's opinion is concerned, but as far as mothers are concerned, I think you can look up to her as a role model, or you can look up to her as, you know, as someone that you could follow, a role model, you know.
But you have to understand her circumstances.
Her
I think
circumstances.
You're referring to the fact that she worked through her mat leave,
Yeah.
news was, and then came back to work 2 weeks after. So,
Yeah.
Reva, I'll let you lend your opinion to this. Do you think she has changed the environment for mothers in the workplace?
I don't think so, and I think the problem I have with the intense focus on Marissa Mayer is that she is an inspiration. I think she's an inspiration regardless of whether you're a man or a woman, and regardless of whether you're a parent, because she's a very young, very successful CEO. She's also worth over $300 million. So she has all kinds of options that the overwhelming majority of working mothers just don't. And I think when we focus so much on women like Marissa Mayer and Sheryl Sandberg, it does a disservice to more relatable working moms. For my book, I interviewed over 500 women who've all done better after starting their families. Now, how they've done it and the ways they've gone about it are very diverse and very different. But there were a lot of women who run small businesses, who are self-employed, who also took 2 weeks of mat leave just because they didn't have any other choice. But they didn't have the financial ability that Marissa Mayer has. Like, she's built a nursery right next to her office. I'm sure she has round-the-clock childcare. So when we focus so much on these stories, yes, they're inspirational, but they're not very helpful to most of us.
Do you think it's actually negative, that it actually may have a negative impact?
I think it's negative in that it takes the story and what we need to hear in the discussion, it veers it so off course. So, like we heard earlier, this became a huge issue. There was columns and columns on, is she undermining mat leave? What does it mean for women? Well, at the end of the day, she's such a small percent. She's in the 1% of working moms. It really doesn't mean anything for most of us. Interesting.
Would you like to add something to that, Vasuki?
1% of working moms, probably not. But you're right. She does have the resources that, you know, an average mother doesn't have. She's worth $300 million. She can have round-the-clock childcare.
Yeah.
And that is one of the huge issues of women, whether they want to pursue work or do they want to stay at home with their child, and that becomes a topic. And then oftentimes, women who choose to have children, even in relationships, they choose to put their career on hold for just that reason. Women make less than men, and that becomes the bottom line on whether or not you are choosing career or motherhood. Absolutely. Having said that, there are women that take their full 52 weeks allowed under Canadian law and stay at home and be a mom and come back and rock the joint. It's up to the individual.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not. That's the whole idea
Yeah.
of the book, is that there are so many different ways to get to this idea of successful career after children. And at the end of the day, it's like you said, it's very individual, where what is success for one person is not for the other person, and it changes over the course of your career and family. And so I do think she's inspirational, but I don't think she's very helpful to most working mothers.
Do you think, though, you know, sometimes I wonder, you know, when I heard the announcement, formerly having been a woman in technology,
Yeah.
I was inspired. I thought, this is amazing. You know, this is a
Yeah.
phenomenal role. And I wonder if having women in these senior roles changes things 20 years down the road. You
I'm
think
sure
in
it does.
terms of, you know, length of mat leave or
Yeah.
things like that?
Well, I think it changes it in that I think we all need to hear more stories that give us a sense of this is possible. And she certainly does that. She has shown that you can be a self-made woman, make this level of money, go out there and run a company and have a family. So she certainly is an inspiration. I mean, I think also there becomes then a lot of pressure where we saw she took away telecommuting shortly after. So, you know, when we say having women at the top, it will change a lot, but maybe not as immediately as we're hoping and thinking.
Interesting. Okay. Now, I know you mentioned to me in the lobby that you telecommute right now.
Yeah.
Perhaps you can tell us about that.
To your thing about taking away telecommuting, yes, it is a big perk offered by many companies, and you know, some people take advantage, some people, I mean, mostly you do really well. In her situation in Yahoo, from what I'm reading, because the company's not doing too well, and because she checked VPN connections and logins and figured out that they were lower when they telecommuted, and she needed the company to come up, she figured, right now, let's bring everyone in. What's to say when Yahoo does get better, that option is available. Yahoo does provide perks. I mean, it's not a normal, I guess, mid-class company. I mean, you get your own gas station, you get your own dry clean, you get, a gym, you have, backup childcare. So they have those availabilities for parents coming in and working, which is why I guess telecommuting in that kind of an environment is not heavily, it's not heavily as required for now, but say when Yahoo does get better. But for me personally, telecommuting really did help. I mean, the whole drive time, going into work, 1 hour, coming back, 2 hours, picking up the kids, it gives that flexibility to work around your family, like you said, having 3 kids or 4 kids, as many, just to be able to organize your life and work virtually, it's great, that offering is great. But at the same time, it does come with certain cons, there are perceptions. Oh, you're working from home. Yeah? Yes. So you need to prove yourself. When you are working from home, you have to prove yourself double, much more, show results, meetings, etc. Right? And sometimes work around the clock. When I mean work around the clock, after you put your kids to sleep, you have a laptop, you can log on and,
Your office is always open.
Yes, pretty much. And that is kind of an expectation. We're not expecting you to come into work, but maybe you could do this for us in return.
So this might be a bit of a personal question, but when you had your 3, right, which is quite because I have 1, I can tell you that seems like quite a bit. Yes. Do you look for opportunities that offer telecommuting specifically?
I definitely do.
Okay.
I definitely do. Yes.
So that would be a condition for you.
Absolutely.
Yes. It would right now, but it depends on the stage. I mean, when the kids are a little more independent, older, they go to school, it might not be as needed. Flex time is better, in some cases. I do believe sometimes going into work, making those meetings, travel is always good, as far as career prospects are concerned. But as of now, bringing up 4-year-olds, I definitely look at telecommuting as an option. Yeah.
Interesting. And Vasuki, I wanted to also bring back something that you had said. This was, again, we had a heated discussion in the lobby, which always happens here. And your question to me is why, expand on that, why are we looking at 2 American women?
Yes. When you had sent in a little synopsis, I said, why are we looking at 2 American women? Corporate America is very different, at least from where I sit, from corporate Canada, because corporate Canada has to comply with a lot of Canadian regulations that does offer benefits to women, specifically pay equity, 52-week mat leave. And one of the companies I had worked for at the time, and I thought this was an interesting perk to consider to offer, was emergency childcare. Not just for moms, but for everybody. Everybody has that day when there's a teacher strike, and what am I going to do with my child? The school bus is not going to pick us up. What do we do? I, for instance, when I was a single mom, it was always in my head when my son would get sick. Okay, how am I going to balance this? I have to go into work and I have this to deal with at the same time. How do I manage it? That was a great idea. Flex shifts, like you said, telecommuting, absolutely. I have that perk, and yes, I get a lot of professional jealousy on the parts of others that, she gets to work from home because she has a child. Yes, I'm not exactly partying at home. I'm working. I do take, I may not work as the same way that you do, where I'm sitting in front of my computer from 8:30 to 5 o'clock when I'm working from home. But you get more productivity out of me because I'm not sitting in traffic for an hour and a half already tired, getting into work and stressed out, and already worried about how am I going to get back home, especially if it's a snow day. There's a lot of stress off of me, means you get a lot of focus from me, a lot of productivity from me. There are days I absolutely have to be at work. And I talk to my other half about that sometimes when childcare issues come up. Right now, it happened recently.
Yeah.
And I said I absolutely cannot take that day and work from home. I had to be there for these 2 days, and he stepped in.
Give me that summary again that you did of premiers and just about women that you found inspirational in the Canadian landscape.
Well, when I got your thing, I just said, I'm going to review of women, because right now we have 6 premiers who are women. Christy Clark, recently elected. Eva, I'm sorry, I can't say her name, from Nunavut. Pauline Marois. Majority of these women, all of them are mothers. All of them, some of them are grandmothers, and 2 of them are single mothers. Christy Clark and Alison Redford.
So women are doing it here is what, and maybe Reva.
I'd love to jump in on a point that you raised where, why are we looking at corporate America? Why are we focusing so much on a corporate career is the other big question. And that's one of the things I really look at in the book, is that there are so many options that everybody has now in terms of how you structure your career. And yet we tend to dominate the advice on this issue in terms of how to go up a corporate ladder or some variant of that. But we've seen, from entrepreneurship to consulting to freelance work, there's so many different ways now that we can build a career that I think we need to expand the discussion beyond just making it in corporate Canada or corporate America.
And just to expand on that, I think women are risk takers. If you look at studies that will show women are more likely to build a new business, and that's partly because they want to juggle their family life with their business life, and they're very good at doing that, as opposed to I don't want to say men, but there are a lot more women entrepreneurs out there than gentlemen. They don't think in a box, they think outside of it because they have to. While it's true women have been in the workforce since World War II, the corporate structure hasn't changed as much. Working hours is still 8:30 to 5 in most cases. Flex would be fantastic if we could have, one starting from 7 to 3 and another starting from 8:30 to whatever. But that choice isn't offered in all companies. So we're still boxed into this work hour that was before World War II, and when it was mostly men. So women find other ways to balance their life, and they do it well. There are a ton of women who have succeeded. Arlene Dickinson, Dragon's Den, CEO. There are women who do it,
and you bring up a good point. I think I definitely want to take a break, but I think I want to come back and hear about some of these women that you've interviewed, because I think that could be a problem too. And I saw a lot of nodding when you said that, the whole idea of how we define success, and maybe because we're presenting these women. These women that are sort of corporate CEOs or people that are successful in the corporate world. Younger women think, well, this is it. This is the definition of success, that I can't build something that is my own thing that works around other priorities. So we are going to take a break. And we've only gotten through like one topic. This is great. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. I want to hear a little bit more about the book and some of these interviews. Stay with us. You're watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Selvarajah. Welcome back to Crossroads on TVI. We're discussing the opportunities and challenges of balancing a career and a motherhood with Reva Seth, Anu Yogeswaran, and Vasuki Thillainadarajah. By the way, if anyone's interested in joining our panel by phone, the number is 416-623-8100. We'd love to hear your thoughts and questions. So going off of what we just ended off with, I think we all would love to hear a little bit about your book, The MomShift.
Sure. So The MomShift is my second book, and it's a very personal book for me. Excuse me. It's the book that I wished I had when I first got pregnant. So I started my career here in Toronto, and I was a corporate lawyer on Bay Street, and I just hated it. And so I tried to make it work, and it didn't, and I ended up moving to the UK. Excuse me. I got engaged, I moved to the UK, and I decided to make just a complete change. I started at the bottom of a PR agency. And so that's where I was when 3 days after my wedding, I found out I was 3 months pregnant. And I was devastated because I felt that my career had ended before it had even started. So I was at the bottom of a PR agency. I was earning pennies to the dollar compared to my corporate job. And I just felt like I didn't know how to navigate forward from this place. And a part of me said, why are we still here? Why is this still happening when a woman gets pregnant and you still feel like all of the old hurdles are here for you to jump over again? Mm-hmm. And I think part of it was that the media loves the story of successful women and how careers and children are an obstacle to continued success. And so for me, this book became a very personal way of finding stories that I could relate to that would inspire me and give me practical tips on how to navigate the way forward.
So now you went ahead and you interviewed, I think it was something like 500 women.
I've interviewed over 500 women now, yeah.
And what are they telling you?
Well, what's fantastic about the interviews that I've done is that I think for a very long time this debate has been very focused on, like we said before, corporate women, professional women, women from certain, there isn't a lot of diversity to the women we're seeing represented. The stories that I've done, I've talked to 500 women that are the complete range. I've talked to teen moms, I've talked to single moms, I've talked to new immigrant mothers, and just it's their stories of how they've navigated their way forward, built successful family lives and successful careers.
And you mentioned earlier that one of the themes that you were getting from them is sort of the opposite of what we're hearing in media. In media, we hear that once you are starting to think about kids, well, should you really be thinking about career success? And meanwhile, the message that you got was...
It was fantastic because so many women are doing better after having kids, and we're just not hearing their stories. And there's actually there's a good news story out there that a lot of women are doing a lot better. They're building strong family lives and strong careers, but their stories aren't still getting out there. And so that's the real goal of the book, is to share all of the options we have and the tips that these women have.
Interesting. Good. Well, you know what?
It's really going.
Sometimes it's the spring. Spring does this to me too. So I'm actually going to talk a little bit about Sheryl Sandberg because you can't avoid not talking about her after having a discussion like this, and because she's had this book Lean In that's come out and it's a bestseller. Before we do that, I do want my viewers to have a look at this little, just a clip of an interview that she did with ABC talking about her book. Here it is.
Women have been 14% of the top jobs in corporate America for 10 years. 10 years of no progress.
Her new book, Lean In, has ignited a firestorm as a sort of feminist manifesto for the Sex and the City generation.
Do you want to lead?
Taking a hard look at the uncomfortable question, why are there still so few women at the top?
We're still nowhere close to having our share of the leadership roles in any industry, in any government, anywhere in the world. There was a national retailer, they printed up onesies. The boys, smart like daddy. The girls, pretty like mommy.
Really?
It was not in the 1950s. That was 2 years ago.
Lean In's controversial message that when it comes to getting ahead, women can be their own worst enemies.
So I think I'll start with you, Anu, because I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, one of the things that she's saying is that, yes, there are definitely perhaps, systematic or institutional obstacles, but her message is that women may be the ones that are actually holding themselves back from getting where they need to be. What are your thoughts on that message?
I personally think she is trying to expedite the process of evolution, I would say. World War II, women took over jobs for men because they had to go out to war and, take on factory work. Then they moved into the service industry. A few of them, we're progressing slowly. We've come to a stage where there are women presidents, women prime ministers, leaders, CEOs. I mean, in my company itself, we flourish with the fact that we have a CEO who's a woman. So in that sense, we have progress, but she wants to push it further ahead. There has to be somewhat, I don't know if I should be calling it a feminist revolution, but the TEDx talk that she did, I mean, there are 3 points that she was trying to drive, and personally to me, it doesn't feel like she is blaming us for where we are, but she's trying to help us. So things like, sit at the table, voice your opinion. If you take credit for your success, don't stand back and say it was someone else's. That's one example. Secondly, she was saying, even as in a family, if you're lucky enough, it can be a challenge. Have a partner who is a partner, someone who will help out in the family. When you need to take on career, they can work with the family, and when you have to support when they need to support career, you can take care of the family. I mean, this is obviously a great way of doing things. And then the third thing that, excuse me, that I really, really liked was where she said, don't leave before you leave. Now, I take it as, we're great at organizing, we're great at planning our lives, we like to look forward to things. But at some time, because we do that, we also take on a lot more responsibility and feel like we cannot grab an opportunity just because of something, just because we're going to get married, just because we're going to start a family. I think that's the point that she's trying to drive through. You shouldn't be using that as a reason to stop. So that's what I feel. To me, I think her speech or her TEDx talk was more for women who want to be leaders, who aspire, but who also worry and wonder, well, can I have it both ways? Can I have a family too? Maybe I want to, and then do I need to stop? It's not for the ladies who are happy with where they are, stay-at-home moms who are very happy where they are. She's not trying to change that. It's just be happy where you are, and you have this opportunity.
Now, as that message is very interesting, but critics would say that the problem with that message is that, and Vasuki, I'll try, is that she's saying that you can have it all, right? And they're not convinced that is actually possible for most women.
You can have it all, and in one thing that I will agree with Ms. Sandberg is that we are the ones stopping ourselves. There's nothing that says you can't have a successful family life and a successful career, but measure it by your standards, not others. What is success to you? What does having a great family mean to you? Don't listen to the media and say that's what I have to live for. Angelina Jolie has 6 children, 3 of them adopted. She can afford to do that, and that's her ideal family. That's what she wanted to do. That's not necessarily what I would choose for myself. There's nothing stopping you from stepping up and saying, this is what I want, and I'm going to go for it. One of the most painful experiences for me personally was losing my job when my son was just 2 years old. And I had to be blunt when I was interviewing, saying, I'm a single mother. I have certain criteria that has to be met. I can't just leave him at home to start a job at 8 o'clock. Work hours, everything, benefits. Telecommuting had to be an option. I needed the flexibility. If you as a company are expecting your employee to be flexible, you have to give the same back. And I think the first 3-4 months, I wasn't quite successful in getting that discussion out when I was interviewing. But by the end of it, I got good at saying this is what I want, and I was really surprised because at the end of it, when I had job offers, I had 3, and I decided where I wanted to go. And that was an eye-opening experience for me. There's nothing wrong with stepping up and saying, I want that. You're pregnant, so what?
But do you think that, maybe Reva,
one thing that I really like about the Sheryl Sandberg book and Lean In is that she opens up the discussion in terms of how your personal life impacts your professional life. My last book was a relationship advice book. And what I think was interesting is that until recently, and still in the majority of cases, we keep relationships and marriage very separate from careers. And Sheryl Sandberg has a whole chapter where she says openly that your biggest career decision is who you marry. And I think that's really interesting because this is the first time that we're taking this holistic approach to long-term career success where you say, yes, everything that happens at home is also going to influence your work life, just as your work life influences your family. So we're breaking down some of these artificial silos, and I think that's a real sign of the evolution that you mentioned.
But do you think that, in a way, by putting out the statement, and I know that she says it's not sort of an exclusive statement, but saying that, you know, women may be the factor, that in a way that women themselves may be a factor in holding themselves back, that she does ignore things that are more systematic and more because most women I know, you know, still tell me, there are people that I'm sure that if we did a survey of 50 women our age, they would say, you know what, we don't share 50-50 at home all the time, or
no,
I have more, you know, work when it comes to looking after elderly parents, or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely.
Do you think this book takes that focus away?
I think, again, it goes to the same Marissa Mayer's thing, where she has an excellent story, she has some fantastic advice, but I do think that, again, when you're Sheryl Sandberg, you have options that the rest of us just don't have. And you're right, there are still systematic structural things that hurt working families. Take the school day, for instance. Why do we still end at 3:30? Why do we take 2 months off? These are prohibitive things for families where then usually in a lot of cases it's the mom looking to figure out what happens between 3:30 and 6, what happens from July to August. There's lots of, society is still not structured for working families, and it is very easy for people with a lot more options than the majority of people to make statements like that. That said, I think it is empowering to say to women, there's a lot more you can do. So there are a lot of hurdles, and that's what, to me, the stories that I heard as well, the 500 women that I spoke to had all found their own unique ways to navigate around the hurdles. So they were leaning in, but they were leaning in to their own way, and it may not have been a corporate America way, it might not have been the way either that anyone on this panel might choose, but they were finding ways around the barriers that still do exist, and we can't acknowledge.
Now, is there one story from the book that you could, I know it's very tough out of 500 to isolate.
Yeah, there's so many stories that stand out. There's one woman that I thought was really interesting because, like I was saying, one of the things that led me to do this book was that there's a real media bias against hearing certain kinds of stories. And so I was writing an article for one of the big Canadian papers on the book, and I put in this woman's story, and the editor actually asked me to take it out because she said, it won't relate to our readers, no one works this hard. And it was a story of a woman who'd come over, and she had an MBA from outside Canada, and it wasn't recognized by any Canadian institutions. Her husband had an engineering degree, also wasn't recognized, and they had a little boy. And so they had come to Canada thinking that she would get a job with her MBA, he would get a job with his engineering degree. It didn't happen. And what they ended up doing was that he took a lower level job and went back to school. And she went back to Ryerson to do an MBA. So she essentially did the same degree again. At the same time, they had a little boy, and she was also working to help pay their bills. And so it was this incredible story where you're just like, it's just incredible to see what she overcame and where she is now. She ended up graduating top of her class at Ryerson, got a great job, had a second kid, they bought a house, but in that interim time, her child was in fairly patchwork childcare, where a lot of times he was there from 7 till 9. It wasn't an ideal situation. And her story really stands out to me, where I think there are so many women like this, and we don't hear their stories. And to me, I find that a lot more inspirational than someone who has a Harvard MBA, who had a great setup and has done great things, but let's look at all these other women and what they're doing also.
Interesting, and you know, you make a good point, because it's by looking at those stories that we can actually find actual changes that can support more of these stories. So Anu, who would you consider a role model? I mean, you've said that these people are exceptions as well, that the Sandbergs and the Mayers are exceptions, so who would you consider?
I think this is going to be funny, but as growing up, I used to watch the Bill Cosby show, and I always thought Mrs. Huxtable was my role model, you know. Okay. Just growing up, it was just interesting. The first time, and it was fascinating because I guess where I grew up, a lot of the women were stay-at-home moms, and we just took that for granted, and all of a sudden there is this mom who can juggle family life and work and be a corporate lawyer and still, you know, have her kids on a leash if she has to. I just I just found that very amusing. But other than her, I mean, growing up, I definitely look up to certain personal people around within my circle, stay-at-home moms and moms who juggle both lives. And I do actually appreciate Angelina Jolie and you know, for what she does. So my role models are, they are at many spectrums.
And by the way, I think Bill Cosby had his practice in the
house.
Yes,
in the
house,
right?
yes.
So I thought, you know, he was actually ahead of his time. He was kind of the stay-at-home, telecommuting dad or whatever.
And I was like, can a husband actually do that?
There you go.
I think my mom was a really huge influence on my life as a role model, and she was a stay-at-home mom. For me, I think the ideal woman is bits and pieces of everybody. I come around. There's a woman I work with in my work, obviously, who I think is an amazing woman. She undermines herself a little bit, and that annoys me. She knows the business inside out. She's got knowledge of everything. She's got it. She's lacking in certain things, especially technical savviness, and she lets that control her a little bit. And I think, you know, you have a lot to offer. Step up, and
she's a mom, I assume.
She is a mother of two.
And she's in a senior position?
In a senior position, and she can go far if she would step up. She's one person that, you know, that as soon as this topic of women holding themselves back came to my mind, she holds herself back, and she has this self-deprecating humor that I do not like. I wish she would walk away from that.
I would love to jump in with a point on this idea of the leaning in and holding back, because one interesting part of the book that I look at are stories of women who deliberately, so one of the strategies you can do is to deliberately stay in one place for a while and then ramp up down the road. And so what's interesting in this discussion on leaning in is that we make it seem as though you have to lean in all the time. You don't.
It can be, it's like a little, little spurts.
Yeah. And even Sheryl Sandberg in the book talks about how she turned down the opportunity to be the CEO of LinkedIn because she wanted to have a second child. And so what I think gets lost in this and leads to women berating themselves that I should be doing more faster is that it's a long game. We're all going to be working until we're 70. You don't have to lean in all the time. And you know what? Men don't lean in all the time. You need to do it at strategic points when it works for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It's much like what marathon runners will tell you to spurts. That's how you do it, right? So we're going to take a break now. These ladies will stay with us because I'm learning a lot here. You're watching Crossroads on TVI with Manjula Selvarajah. Welcome back to Crossroads on TVI. We're discussing the opportunities and challenges of balancing a career and motherhood with Reva Seth, Anu Yogeswaran, and Vasuki Thillainadarajah. So just quickly, because I know we may get calls on it, your book is available in?
January 2014.
Okay, so you're working away really hard.
Doing the rewrites, yes.
Okay.
So we're almost there.
Almost there. So I guess this would be a good point for me to ask you. I mean, you are balancing a bunch of things as well. You know, you're an entrepreneur, you're a mother as well. I mean, are there things that you run into that are points of frustration in that work-life balance?
Constantly and daily. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's like you mentioned, you feel like you're working all the time, which is okay because I get flexibility and I can control how I work. But that's hard. I mean, there is the guilt. I think everybody feels guilty at times when, I know recently I'm trying to finish this second draft. I still have client work to do. Yeah, I'm snappier with my kids than I'd like to be. I'm cranky, and it's just, I'm tired, and it is hard, but it's also not forever. I mean, I've loved doing this book because I've learned so much, where you realize that, you know what, kids are forgiving. A couple of days, it doesn't matter if you're not doing everything that you'd like to do. So, yeah, but certainly it's not a serene day-to-day by any means.
It's not a walk in the park every day. Okay. Because then otherwise all of us would.
Yeah. Can you write a book about that?
Yeah, exactly.
Anu, what about you? Are there points that you hit?
For me, one of the biggest challenges, of course, when I had triplets, first question was, are you really going to go back to work? I mean, those were questions from work, those were questions from my family, you know. It's like, is it possible for you to do that? Or why would you want to do that? Why don't you just focus on them? You were blessed with 3 kids, raise them. To me, during my maternity leave, I just realized that I just did not want to be someone who was, I guess, end up always being in my kid's face, as you could put it. I wanted to give that break to myself and, you know, have somewhat of a career and progress that way and have a balanced lifestyle. It is hard. It is definitely really hard. But when I started off, I was actually juggling a lot of things. When I came back to work, it was much harder than I thought it was going to be. Juggling a lot of things. I had a nanny taking care, and my mom was taking care of the kids, but I had to rush back and, you know, get things done for them too. But slowly I realized work needed to be balanced too. It was more than quantity, more than, okay, taking everything on is quality. You know, try saying no, try saying, yeah, you know, this can be done at this, prioritize. I also believe in taking breaks at work, you know, that 15-minute lunch break and 15 minutes, you know, 30 minutes snack, lunch break, just revives you. Prioritizing, making sure what you have to get done today gets done. It also helps with your performance plan and stuff like that. So you're motivated while you're working because you're seeing results. And then also setting a time at 5:30, I have to go and pick up my kids. So from 5 to 9, don't bug me. I mean, preferably even after 9, don't bug me. But, you know, my job as a programmer, I support clients. Yeah, there are urgent issues. Well, it can wait after 9, you know?
So you have this dead time between 5 and 9.
5 to 9, because my kids can be put to sleep. And, you know, of course, my husband helps out. And, you know, at least we're there for them. I mean, this is like a perfect situation. There are days when, no, this has to get done. Can someone else take on? And you have to do it. But, you know, you have to set some kind of limits. And I also think another aspect is relationship. You know, when you have kids, you have your spouse, you have to build that relationship with them. That's a work-life balance too. You kind of take them for granted, you know, and say, oh, okay, they're there, and you work out the schedule with them. But you also have to take that time out once a month, twice.
Because it's this other, you're right, you know, you have your career, you have and then you have your spouse, your other half.
Yeah,
right?
And we believe in having date nights, just going out and, you know, just talking it out, family, everything, you know, and it's good. It's healthy for us.
And that's what helps you kind of keep things
balance.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I have learned, because I am now no longer single mother, is learning to let go and let that other half take some responsibility. I have a really hard time with it because I am a control freak to begin with, and it's really hard for me to let him have it, and then when he does, it's criticizing.
I'm apologizing for laughing. It's just your other half is in the studio and I see a tremendous amount of nodding. But anyway, go on.
And on top of it, like, I have other support in the form of his parents as well. So I have this support. I have to learn to say, okay, this is something I can let go. And I feel that at times, and I'm pretty sure every woman has been through this, feels like you have to do it all. You have to handle this, and you have to be good at your work at home. You have to be a good spouse to your husband. You can let it go a little bit and enjoy. And it's okay to be selfish at times. That's the part that I have to struggle with every time, you know, letting Denis take over sometimes and take care of things and say, okay, he's not going to do it my way, but he's going to get it done and let it be.
That's also tougher because you've been doing it for a while on your own too, right?
And it's also hard to change the dynamics of the relationships that's been built. Like, sometimes my son will have a hard time. He'll still look at me like, is that what I'm doing?
Okay.
Yes, that's what you're doing. Yeah. And you're right. When you have it all, or you're trying to have it all, you have to remember your other half and try to remember to make some time for them as well. It's very important, because sometimes you forget and you're just like running a marathon, and you realize something's slipping by and you don't know what it is and you don't know how to fix it. And sometimes
I know a couple of women that I spoke to and just kind of getting prepared for the show, and I heard that a lot, that sometimes the relationship with the other half is sometimes what falls. You know, if anything, it's career and kids, or kids and career, and then the house cleaning, the running, and then the other half. But I'm also curious, and quickly I'd love to hear, are there things that you think in terms of sort of corporate policies or government resources, government policies that you think can change in Canada to make this idea of work-life balance for career mothers
I think the fact that we don't have a national daycare plan is a tragic statement, because that is the number one thing we could do to help all working families, is get good childcare. And it's the way to deal with so many other issues that we don't have time for in this show, but it's the most vulnerable families and the most vulnerable children that are falling through because we don't have enough spots. I live downtown. It is impossible to get childcare. It's impossible to get downtown childcare because there just aren't enough daycares. And so it's fine if you can pay for alternatives or if you have company daycare or something like that. But I mean, we're really doing a massive disservice to working families by not having a daycare plan still.
Yeah,
I was really insulted that childcare was considered gravy, and that was on the jobs. Infuriated by it. How could you consider that to be a perk? It's not, especially in a country like Canada where you're depending on immigration to backfill, population, and you need to do everything you can possibly can to increase that birth rate, encourage people to have families and children. And here you are talking childcare like it's something you can get with your salad.
It's
elder
a necessity.
Care. It's a necessity. Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting you raise elder care, because one of the really interesting points that I've come across on this is that people still think, well, you chose to have the child, right? But they're saying with elder care becoming such a big issue, maybe we'll see a shift because you didn't choose to have parents, you all have them. So, we're starting to maybe reframe how we see this, but that's what's driven it until now, is the sense that you chose to have them. Now
well, I think the whole idea of elder care is going to become a big issue very soon, because more and more, that was another thing that I noticed with women I spoke to too, that they spoke about, well, it's not just that, but it's the fact that I have to look after sort of two sets of aging parents, or be thinking about that at least, right?
And then the kids as well, and it's going to be a real crunch point.
Are there other things that you think in the corporate workplace could?
Well, definitely telecommuting, they are offering that. I mean, they're starting to offer that, and to an extent where you can work virtually from home, because they have all these applications where, I mean, it helps the company too. Real estate, cutting down costs on travel, those are big benefits for the company. So as long as you're performing really well and are able to communicate with people, they have people, I mean, it can work both ways, as I mentioned. It could be looked upon as a con. I mean, you'll be working with someone in India at 1 a.m. in the morning because you can do it, right? But it gives someone that flexibility. There are bigger companies, as I mentioned, where the perks are, like for example, mine on the second floor, they're a daycare. It's expensive though, right? I mean, and it can be subsidized, whatever. And another thing that the government is doing is introducing the full day kindergarten program. Before parents didn't till 6, they had to, till the child turned 6, they had to, find ways, right? So these are things that the government is trying to do, but yes, it is slow.
Interesting. Well, Vasuki, you get the final note.
Structure the business around families, and not so much, not structure families around business would be my takeaway. Women are entered the workforce, like I mentioned before. We're there to stay. Sorry, fellas. We're not leaving. And that does mean it can no longer be 8:30 to 5. One of the conversations that I was just thinking about is my mother-in-law-to-be and I were having a discussion about the fact that banks are now open on Sundays. She was like, wow, really? That makes so much more sense, because before you couldn't do anything and you had to take time off work to go do it, and now you don't have to.
Or run
errands. And one of the things I like about the company that I work for, short Fridays in the summertime. We get out at a certain time, gives us that afternoon to do whatever we want, spend time with our family or run errands. Have, like you said, shift works, flex works, flex hours, have emergency childcare. Bring in those perks that really mean something other than one of the things that was introduced at work, and I thought, okay, this means absolutely nothing. It's called work perks, and it just brings up discounts and deals around you, and I'm like,
Have
I'm
no
not a
idea.
shopaholic.
But, you know, a good point on this to end it is that we will see a change because there's a strong business case for making the corporate change. For instance, say in a law firm, it costs over $300,000 to replace a third-year associate. So companies are vested now in finding ways to retain talent, and all of the ways that we heard about, you know, it'll happen not from an equity reason or a fairness reason. It'll happen ultimately because it makes good business sense to retain women, and women are worried about their families often.
A great point to end it on. Thank you so much for being on the show. We look forward to
Thank you very
I think
much
we
for
all
having
do.
us.
Yeah.
Learn from this book. It's been such a pleasure. And here are our final thoughts for the day. It has been 4 years since May 2009 when a decades-old conflict in Sri Lanka came to an end. Today, the team at CrossRoads joins the community in remembering the thousands of lives lost in those final moments. May they rest in peace, and may the ones that they left behind one day find their peace. Thank you all for joining us. You've been watching CrossRoads on TVI with Manjula Selvarajah.
தமிழின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி